How many of you were here last week? Some of you were, some of you weren't. I passed around, what did you select out of the bag? A bow. For those of you who were not here last week, what I invited everyone to do was to look around at these beautiful faces of God and to see and imagine a bow on everybody's head. So each of you could be reminded of the gift that you are. Okay, so there you go, Tracy. Tracy, Mary got it going on for just a moment if you would indulge and perhaps do that. You don't have to do the sticky thing unless you want to. But sometimes we need a visual, if our imagination's like, oh, that's so silly, Jeanie, because I talked about the child within last week and the curiosity and this time of year that we can allow that part of us to truly come out to play. Okay, and on that note also, I thought if you're having a difficult time during the holidays or any time of year finding joy, I've got more than you need right here, okay? So just so you know, joy is always in abundant supply. You don't even have to look for it. As I mentioned last week, it's in here. So thank you for being here. I'm just delighted to be here, and what a great morning to hear about the mortgage. Hello. Let's just say thank you again to everyone who was involved in this whole ongoing experience, and even Jenna from early on, just all of it. Everyone who was a part of this. And when you said, I thought, I'm trying to remember the first time I spoke here, maybe 10 years ago. I don't remember. But what matters is that we're all here right now. Okay? And this is the last week of Advent, and the gift of joy is what we are going to be exploring this morning. I like to think of it as unwrapping the gift of joy, because sometimes we all have a different idea of what that means. Sometimes we equate happiness with joy. How many of you have maybe done that sometimes? It's not, well, I'm happy, Say, okay, but do you say I'm filled with happy or I'm filled with joy? What might follow that? Because happiness is typically from something external, a condition, an event. Oh, I'm so happy right now, and I'm, I remember years ago when the Buddhist monks were at quite a few churches and such, and it was just like, be happy, be happy, be happy. And I'm like, sometimes you just don't feel like that. And the holidays in particular can be a very challenging time for a lot of us, for whatever reasons that we still carry within us. And to me, if we open ourselves, I think last week I mentioned about rewriting your Christmas story. That's a wonderful, powerful way to reframe experiences that have brought you to this moment that may not have been the best. And sharing from my personal experience with Christmas, truthfully, Christmas was never one of my favorite times of year, okay? I grew up in a military family. It was a very different life. And I associated Christmas with depression, alcohol, and a hazy, smoky-filled apartment, okay? And falling asleep on the seats in the bowling alley or at the NCO club or whatever the case may be. It certainly wasn't something that as a kid, you hear these things and you see these things, and we were stationed in the Philippines and Japan during those formative years of my life. I was born in Texas, but never lived there any amount of time, and in Massachusetts briefly. But the formative years from like 5 up to 10, 11 or so, 4 or 5, were all spent overseas, okay? And my dad, he wasn't an officer, he was an NCO, and he was an airplane mechanic, World War II vet. He had PTSD. And my mom, I've shared before, she was Russian, and she and her family never saw each other after the age of 19, okay? My mom's family escaped communism, fleeing out of Russia shortly after the Bolshevik Revolution. 7 kids were born in Russia. My mom and the younger sister, my aunt, were born in China. So my mom, as a Russian woman, lived the first 25 years of her life in China. Very, very different life, okay? And when the Japanese occupied China, my mom and her sister were visiting someone, and they had to make a choice to stay where they were or go back. And if they did, they would never have made it out. So again, at the age of 19, she never saw her family again. All right? She never knew. I think I had like, well, 7, 9, okay, so I had like, what, 8 aunts and uncles? And her father had already passed when she was 14. So I never grew up with what people think of, oh, we're going to go to grandma's house and all that kind of stuff. I had no concept of that. So for me, my life has been about healing a lot of those really wounded places within me and trying to learn how to write a different story. And for many, many years in my life, I just was not equipped to even know where to start, how to do that. And that was part of the impetus for me to go and get a counseling degree, okay? Because I wanted to help people because my dad struggled so much, my mom struggled so much because my mom became an alcoholic. Learning how to cope with a Russian woman coming to this country in 1948, okay, with everything that was going on. I talked about thriving, right, rather than surviving. That was not something she was equipped to do either. She just didn't have it within her. So like we always hear in Unity, what? We do the best we can wherever we are on our journey with the consciousness from which we are living and the state that we're in. And so much of my life, I felt like I've just flown by the seat of my pants, just to the next moment. What do I do here? What do I do here? And so this time of year, I have really worked so hard, and it's been a labor of love. At first, I was so angry about it and just so bitter and hurt. And where I'm going with this is, there's a wonderful quote by Khalil Gibran that says, "Your joy is your sorrow unmasked." Okay? Your joy is your sorrow unmasked. They're the two sides of the same coin. Because oftentimes we think, well, if I'm sad and I'm sorrowful and I'm grieving, which for my mom, she spent her all I knew was grief at the holidays. And I carried that. But if that's what a lot of your experience has been, or when we lose our loved ones in the physical, we can stand here and I can say to you, and we can all go, yeah, well, life is eternal, and that's great, and that's what I know to be true. But we miss that physical presence. But we have the choice to create a different relationship with that eternal soul. I'm closer to my mom now than I ever was because we weren't really close when I was growing up because of the life that I lived. I was not okay. My family wasn't cool with me. And that's a whole other story about the grief that I carried within my heart, because how could I not be okay? You know, in a kid's mind, you're like, well, this is my family and they're supposed to love me, and all those things that we tell ourselves. And my story is just unique to me, but many, many people, and a lot of you here, I'm sure today we could all sit together in a circle and share different heartaches and experiences that we've gone through. So the beauty of joy and sorrow is that your heart can be carved out more deeply, more fully when you go through deep sorrow and grief. To where the joy, you're creating this container that can hold even more joy. So that joy and sorrow can exist within the same space. They don't have to be mutually exclusive. And here it is, this season of the year, that Unity celebrates the birth of what? The Christ consciousness, yes? Okay, unity does not see, unity, one more time. Unity does not look at the birth of Christ in the traditional way, okay? It's more about the birth of the Christ within. And in fact, what I want to read to you, my glasses are here. That's good. Doing good, Jeanie. Okay, usually they're everywhere, but here, right? Okay. Charles and Myrtle Fillmore, most of you, if you're in Unity, are familiar that they're the founders of Unity. So I want to read what they have to say. They saw Christmas as a season of great joy and expectancy, okay? And that's Advent, anticipation, what's coming, okay? And expectancy, remember, I've spoken on this before, is different than expectation, okay? Expectancy is about the good that we know is already there, and we're open to it, okay? Luke 2:10, do not be afraid. I bring you good tidings of great joy, which shall be for all people. All people. And we hear Jesus is what? The reason for the season. We hear all these cliches and metaphors and everything. But the Fillmores, they understood Christmas in metaphysical terms. That's how Unity looks at the Bible. Meta just simply means above and beyond this physical experience, okay? It's beyond the physical birth of Jesus, and it's not a Christmas story of the past. Because we think Jesus was born, yada, 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 a long time ago and all of that, and that's great, but we can take that and bring it to this now moment and let it be this new birth within us in the now, this rebirthing, this renewal of that Christ light. Again, what am I saying to you? I'm saying, hey, you know what? You get to write this any way you want to. And I encourage you to do that in such a way, like I mentioned last week, what is going to align you with that frequency and that vibration of Jesus, of that agape love that I spoke about last week. That is not a love we know in our human experience. We know it through our divine experience, through the remembrance of all that we are, and to know that within here, the kingdom within is already there. We can access it 24/7. And throughout the season, we can choose, because joy is a choice. Ultimately, it's a choice. Today, I choose joy. So we can choose to be that vessel. We can choose to be that expression. Like I said last week, Jesus was not the exception. He was the example. And we can choose to be that too in everything that we do, everything that we say, how we show up. These beautiful bows on your heads, for those of you who left them on, I tell you every time I look over there, I just want to say, woohoo! Thank you for being a gift in my life and for a gift for everybody that's here. Danny, look at all these gifts just for you. He's like, yeah, Jeanie, I'm checking them out. I'm checking them out, right? So it's a bringing forth of the Christ light, the Christ consciousness that's taking place in the midst of every day, of every moment. It's a time for inner celebration, and that's what today is. You know, monthly we sing the birthday song. Maybe later we could say, it's your birthday. Happy Jesus, whatever we want to do. We can make it up, right? So I'm just saying, here's that spark of joy within, that childlike playfulness that gets to create it and make it up as you go along without censoring everything, going, oh, I'm an adult. What are they going to think of me if I do that? Forget about it. I used to do that too because I was always worried what people were going to think about me. Me either anymore, Tracy. The heck with that. Right. So a time for inner celebration when the Christ is born in our human hearts. For our divine nature, which Jesus, we know, demonstrated to be born into the consciousness at the center of our human soul. As I mentioned earlier, the kingdom within, that holy, sacred place. And this new birth, think of it as a now birth. A new now birth. We hear about new normal? No. There is no normal. Beyond that. Truly supernatural. I think of an intimacy with the Christ consciousness. An intimacy with yourself, with that higher self of you that you're learning and you're striving to integrate your human self with your ego self so that at every moment, what did I say last week? Life can be easy peasy or easier and peasier. Because sometimes it's still going to feel a little whatever, but you'll find that, this is different. And that's why I shared what I did with you earlier about my personal challenges throughout this lifetime. Oh, I just touched the bag of joy. Okay, let me bring it out here. How about that? It said, Jeanie, put it out front. Thank you for getting my attention, right? I have this Christmas light, and I was going to turn it on earlier, so give me just a moment. I just realized, got to find the button here. Well, okay, just imagine it's on, because I'm not going to get into all this. Anyway, so when you think of joy, what comes up for you? Your dad, the clown. Okay. But, okay, literally, okay. But take it for just a moment. If you think of, I'm filled with joy, what is that for you? Do you really know? Or maybe it's a moment of instant gratification with, oh, this makes me so happy, and that's great. But to string those moments, okay, there you go. I knew there was a reason for this. To string those moments together and know how to turn on the button, right? So that you can breathe life into it and have yourself, these metaphors are rolling at me, to plug into source, right? To have that, come on now, to have that battery be so charged that it's like the Energizer Bunny at Christmas. So, I always love a little humor, because to me, there's nothing like humor to open your heart. And especially, as I mentioned earlier, something that I was committed to doing, to structure and to create the holidays differently for myself. And this particular holiday, I'm going to be spending it a little differently than I have in quite a few years. And I'm a little about it, but I'm okay. I'll have to get back to you in January and let you know how it went. Okay? But and that's it. I'm so grateful. And that's oftentimes the wellspring of joy comes from that. I'm grateful to be able to say, Jeanie, you know what, kiddo? Let that creative part of you inspire your experience, for you to make the choices and for you to show up like the candles earlier, and to have that Christ light within me when I go to this family holiday experience on Wednesday, that I can just let it shine. And it doesn't have to be affected by anybody else that's there, like Jesus. We talk about the power and presence, and to let it flow through us. And oftentimes, and I struggled with this for a while, like, ooh, that love as me, that sounded a little at first, but now it's like, no. So yeah, the love and the light and the joy and the peace and all the things that we've been lighting candles about during Advent, and even more than when I show up on Wednesday morning and then again on Wednesday afternoon. You know, sure I said that. Oh, and we'll get on Wednesday afternoon. I'm like, okay, I've got this. And that's what I said last week. I've got it. Because I'm not going there. I'm not doing this on my own. My higher self says we've got this. And not we, like it's, we've got this. You are all right. And whatever I experience in my emotionality as a spiritual being in my human experience, all of it's okay. If I have some trepidation, if I have some angst, if I have whatever, it's for me to what? Take responsibility and own what I'm feeling, and not from a place of criticism, but from a place of awareness. And say, oh, okay, I'm feeling this. What do I need to do right now to help myself in this moment? I think last week I said a prayer, a mantra, a song, a breath. What will help me right now in this moment to show up and shine that light with nothing to prove, no agenda, just simply to be there and allow the love, the light to flow through me. And whatever I may bump up against with anybody that's there, as soon as it happens, for me to be so present that I'm aware in that moment, because then I can shift it. You know that holy shift moment? Yeah, one of those rather than the other. Because the F in that word is all about the faith. Take that other 4-letter word and put the F in there and you got holy shift. I got it. Yeah. It's what it's all about. It will transform any moment. You get to fill it in however you want to. Is that empowering? Yeah. Divine sovereignty, does that allow you to reclaim a sense of agency? That you're making your choices rather than having them be made for you because maybe you're still feeling like a victim or something's happening to you and you have no control or power over the situation? Absolutely you do. An infamous quote, Viktor Frankl, between stimulus and response, there is a space. And in that space is your power to choose. It is all up to you. Jesus made choices consistently, did he not? Yeah. Even in his moments of, oh my word, I can only imagine. Yeah. To let that energy be reborn and rebirthed in you, in your heart, to expand, and to let any sorrow or grief or pain or whatever you may have experienced or still experience in your life, to let that energy, it's gonna, it doesn't feel so good, but the reward is invaluable. Let's all take a breath. Let's just take a breath. When you're doing and being what it is you are called to do and to be, like Rumi says, there's a river of joy that flows through you. It's endless. And that river just moves and it flows. And I always think of all the rivers going back into what? The ocean, right? So that river can carry you. You can just let go and let it carry you back to that sacred and holy place of oneness, that place of restoration, where every cell, every fiber of your being, every muscle, every organ, every bone, every aspect of your physicality is what? Reborn, renewed, restored. You are made whole again. So I invite you to let that joy, that gift of joy, that you unwrap it every day and go stand in front of the mirror with that bow on your head. If that's what it takes, and look at you and say, I am a gift of the Most High. How do I want to share my gift today? And so it is.